It was supposed to be just another ordinary evening at the luxurious downtown hotel, where the sound of clinking glasses and soft music filled the air. Guests in elegant suits and dresses moved about, unaware that within moments, a single act would shift the entire atmosphere and leave everyone speechless. Among the crowd was a young black girl, no more than 17, who had come in with hope in her eyes. She wasn't a guest, nor was she trying to cause trouble. She simply wanted a chance, an opportunity to ask about work or maybe even get a glass of water after a long day. But instead of kindness, what she encountered was a wall of rejection that cut deeper than words could ever explain. The waitress, with a sharp tone and impatient glare, didn't bother to ask questions or understand the girl's presence. With a dismissive hand, she pushed her back and said those painful words. "Get out." The command wasn't just about leaving the hotel. It carried weight, judgment, and a clear message that she didn't belong there. Other guests noticed, some whispering, others looking away, unwilling to step in. The young girl stood frozen, her heart pounding, her cheeks burning with humiliation. She hadn't expected open arms, but she hadn't expected to be treated like she was invisible either. This was the moment where everything seemed to stop. The girl's hands trembled as she clutched the small folder she carried, the one that held her dreams, applications, references, and the hope that someone might just give her a chance. She wanted to explain, to speak, to tell her story, but the waitress's voice drowned out her courage. With a firm push toward the door, the world suddenly felt colder. The girl's eyes glistened, not from anger but from the ache of being turned away before anyone even knew her name. And then it happened. Just as the girl was about to step back into the night, feeling like she had lost more than just an opportunity, a figure entered the room. The doors swung open, and the hotel owner himself walked in. His presence commanded respect instantly. The chatter softened, and all eyes turned toward him. Tall, composed, and with an air of quiet authority, he looked around the lobby and immediately noticed the scene unfolding at the entrance. His eyes locked onto the trembling girl, then shifted to the waitress still standing firm, arms crossed, as if proud of what she had done. No one spoke. The silence was heavy, the kind of silence that makes the air feel thick. Guests leaned forward, sensing something important was about to happen. The waitress straightened up, suddenly unsure, but still unaware of what was to come. The young girl lowered her gaze, wishing she could disappear, but it was too late. The owner had already seen everything. And then, in a single moment that no one in that hotel would ever forget, the owner stepped forward and did something so unexpected, so unthinkable, that the entire room gasped. What he did next would change the girl's life forever, and leave everyone questioning their own silence. The owner's eyes stayed fixed on the young girl, and though he hadn't said a word yet, his presence alone shifted the room. People who had moments ago looked away were now watching closely, almost guilty that they hadn't intervened. The waitress, sensing the change in atmosphere, straightened her uniform and tried to appear calm, though her fingers nervously fidgeted at her side. The girl, still standing near the door with her folder pressed tightly against her chest, wished she could melt into the floor. She had never wanted to be the center of attention, especially not like this. What the crowd didn't know was the weight behind that folder she carried. Inside were handwritten notes from her mother, job applications she had been filling out tirelessly, and a small photo of her younger brother. For her, stepping into that hotel wasn't just about seeking work. It was about survival, about finding a way to provide something better for her family. They had been through too much already, and this hotel, with its sparkling lights and polished marble floors, had seemed like a place where hope might be possible. She had whispered to herself before walking through the doors that maybe tonight would be different. But life had rarely been kind. Growing up, she had seen her mother work endless shifts just to keep food on the table. She had learned early how to stretch every dollar, how to sacrifice her own needs, and how to face rejection without letting it break her spirit. Still, hearing "get out" in front of so many strangers stung in a way that she hadn't prepared for. It wasn't just about being told to leave. It was the shame, the reminder that doors weren't always open for everyone equally. Meanwhile, the waitress replayed the last few minutes in her mind. She hadn't expected the owner to walk in at that exact moment. In her eyes, she had only been protecting the hotel's image, making sure the lobby looked perfect for the wealthy guests who paid thousands to stay there. She thought she was doing her job, keeping order, keeping appearances. But now, as she saw the owner's expression darken with each passing second, she wasn't so sure. A flicker of doubt passed through her, though pride kept her from showing it. The guests whispered among themselves, some murmuring about how unfair it all seemed, others speculating on what the owner might do next. A businessman near the bar leaned over to his companion and whispered, "He never tolerates this kind of thing. Something big is about to happen." His words only deepened the tension, as if everyone in the room knew they were on the edge of witnessing a moment that would not be forgotten. The girl lifted her chin slightly, gathering the last fragments of courage inside her. She wanted to speak, to explain herself before the silence crushed her. But the weight of all the stares pressed down too heavily. She thought of her brother waiting at home, of her mother's tired smile, and of the promise she had made to herself that she wouldn't give up, no matter how many times the world told her to leave. The owner finally took a step closer. His polished shoes echoed against the marble floor, each step sounding louder in the quiet room. The waitress's breath quickened, and the girl clutched her folder tighter, bracing herself for whatever would come next. The air felt heavy with anticipation, as if the entire hotel itself was holding its breath. And just before he opened his mouth to speak, the girl's heart raced faster than ever. She had no idea whether this moment would end in her complete humiliation, or in something she had been desperately searching for all along. The owner paused, his eyes shifting from the waitress to the girl, and the suspense of his silence grew unbearable. What he was about to do would not only decide her fate but also reveal a truth about the hotel no one had expected. The owner's voice finally broke the silence, low and steady, carrying a weight that made everyone lean in closer. He didn't shout, he didn't rush, he simply asked, "What happened here?" The question was directed at no one in particular, yet it felt like it demanded the truth from both the waitress and the trembling girl. The waitress cleared her throat, trying to sound confident. "Sir, she doesn't belong here. I was just making sure she didn't disturb the guests." Her words were clipped, rehearsed, like she had already decided what story needed to be told. But the owner's sharp gaze lingered on her longer than she expected, and her confidence began to crack. The girl shifted uncomfortably, torn between staying silent and defending herself. Every instinct told her that speaking up could either save her or make things worse. She remembered too many times when her voice had been ignored, when her explanations fell on ears that didn't care. But this moment felt different. The way the owner studied her, calm, patient, yet piercing, wasn't the way people usually looked at her. Her lips parted, ready to explain why she had come, but the words tangled in her throat. Meanwhile, whispers traveled through the lobby like wildfire. Guests speculated about the girl's story. Some assumed she was lost, others thought she was trespassing, a few even wondered if she might be someone important, connected to a secret the hotel wasn't ready to share. Suspicion hung in the air, and the mystery deepened. The owner, still silent, turned his gaze back to the waitress, and that look alone was enough to unsettle her. She remembered the strict training sessions he had personally led for the staff when the hotel first opened. He had always emphasized dignity, respect, and the idea that every person who walked through the doors deserved to be treated as though they mattered. She realized now how far she had stepped from that teaching, and yet her pride kept her standing stiffly in place. But there was another layer to this moment, one no one else in the room knew. The owner had a past that connected him to stories much like this one. Years ago, before he became successful, he had been turned away from places just like this. He knew the sting of rejection, the sharp edge of words like, "You don't belong." It was a wound he carried quietly, one that had shaped the way he built his empire. And now, standing in front of this young girl with her dreams clutched in a folder, that wound threatened to reopen. The girl, gathering what courage she had left, finally whispered, I just wanted to ask about work." Her voice was soft, but in the silence it carried. Gasps followed, not because of what she said, but because of how simple her request was compared to the treatment she had received. Some guests exchanged uneasy glances, others looked away, ashamed they had let it escalate this far without speaking up. The tension only grew heavier. The owner didn't respond right away, and in that pause, a new subplot began to stir among the guests. A woman near the corner, dressed elegantly in pearls, whispered to her husband, "Do you think she's connected to him? Maybe that's why he's so quiet." Another guest, a man in a gray suit, frowned and muttered, "This isn't just about a job. There's something bigger here. You can see it in his eyes." Even the staff, standing at the edges of the room, exchanged worried looks. They had never seen the owner hesitate like this. Usually his decisions were swift, final, unquestionable. But tonight something was holding him back, something unspoken, hidden deep in his past or in the way he saw the girl standing before him. The waitress, desperate to regain control, interrupted with a sharper tone. "Sir, we have policies. She can't just walk in here asking for things. It doesn't work that way." But her words only made the air colder, the silence around her more accusing. The owner finally took a step closer to the girl, his expression unreadable. He reached out, not to push her away, but as if he were about to take the folder from her trembling hands. The entire lobby held its breath, waiting for what he might say, what he might uncover, and whether this moment would reveal more than anyone was ready for. Because what lay inside that folder wasn't just papers. It was the truth of who this girl was, where she came from, and perhaps a secret that tied her fate to the very walls of this hotel. The owner's hand hovered for a moment before gently taking the folder from the girl. His fingers brushed the worn edges, and he could feel how much it had been handled, how it carried more than just paper. It carried desperation, hope, and the weight of responsibility. The girl's breath caught in her throat as she let it go, as if surrendering not just documents but her last chance at being seen. Every eye in the lobby followed the folder as he opened it slowly, carefully, the sound of the paper crackling echoing louder than the music in the background. Inside were job applications, neatly filled out despite smudges from being handled too many times. There were reference letters written with shaky handwriting, from neighbors and community members who had vouched for her work ethic. And then, tucked between the pages, a small, faded photograph slipped out and landed on the polished floor. It was of a little boy with the same bright eyes as the girl, smiling despite the weariness in his face. The owner paused, staring at that photo longer than anyone expected. His jaw tightened, his expression shifting, though no one could read exactly what he was thinking. The guests leaned closer, whispering, "Whose boy is that?" one man asked quietly. Another woman whispered back, "Her brother, maybe. Look at how carefully she keeps it." The tension deepened, not just because of what was being revealed, but because of the owner's silence. He wasn't speaking, and that silence said more than words ever could. The waitress, now visibly unsettled, tried again to take control. "Sir, with all due respect, she shouldn't even be here. This is a 5-star hotel. We have standards to keep." Her words sounded hollow, almost trembling, as if even she knew she was fighting a losing battle. But still, she clung to her position, afraid of what admitting she was wrong would mean. The owner finally looked up from the photograph and fixed his gaze on the girl. His voice was quiet, but it carried across the room. "What's his name?" The question took the girl by surprise. Her lips parted, and for the first time she felt seen. "Daniel," she whispered, almost afraid to say it out loud. The owner repeated the name under his breath, and for just a fleeting second, there was a softness in his eyes that no one had ever seen before. The lobby grew colder with suspense. What was the connection? Why had the photo struck him so deeply? The guests could sense there was more to this than anyone understood. Some began speculating that the girl's family had history with the hotel. Others thought the owner recognized something personal in her struggle. Each guess only added to the mystery that now hung heavier in the air. The girl stood nervously, clutching the strap of her worn bag, waiting for his judgment. She knew this moment could define everything, the chance she had been chasing or the final rejection that would break her spirit. Her voice trembled as she added, "I just wanted to do something for him, to make life a little easier." The honesty in her words silenced even the whispers. The owner closed the folder slowly and handed it back to her, but his expression remained unreadable. He stepped back, his eyes narrowing as if he was piecing together something no one else in the room could see. The guests watched with bated breath, their curiosity now tangled with unease. The waitress shifted uncomfortably, sensing that her fate, too, might be caught in whatever storm was brewing. And then, without warning, the owner turned to the staff standing nearby. "Clear the lobby," he ordered firmly. Gasps spread through the crowd. No one had ever seen him dismiss paying guests before. The staff hesitated, unsure, until he repeated the command with a sharper edge. Slowly, reluctantly, people began filing out, though not without protest or sideways glances filled with curiosity. Within minutes, the once bustling lobby was nearly empty, leaving only the girl, the waitress, and the staff standing awkwardly at the edges. The grand chandelier above seemed to flicker in the silence, and the tension grew unbearable. Why would he clear the lobby? What was he about to reveal? The girl's heart pounded as the owner took one more step closer. His expression grave, his voice low. "There's something about you," he said, almost to himself. "Something I can't ignore." The room felt smaller, the weight of his words pressing down on everyone present. The waitress swallowed hard, the girl trembled, and the staff exchanged nervous glances. Everyone knew the climax was coming, that the next words or actions would unravel everything hidden beneath the surface. And as the owner drew in a slow breath, preparing to speak again, the entire hotel seemed to hold still, waiting for the unthinkable truth to finally break free. The air inside the grand lobby felt charged, as though the walls themselves were bracing for what was about to unfold. The owner's words lingered in the silence, and before anyone could fully process them, the heavy glass doors of the hotel swung open again. A man in a dark suit stepped inside, his appearance sharp and deliberate, his eyes scanning the nearly empty lobby with purpose. He wasn't a guest and he wasn't staff. His presence felt different, unsettling, as though he knew exactly what scene he was walking into. The girl instinctively took a step back, clutching her folder tighter against her chest. The waitress, already pale from the owner's glare, looked even more unsettled now. And the staff, who had remained quietly at the edges, exchanged uncertain glances, sensing that this new arrival was no coincidence. The man walked with confidence, his polished shoes clicking against the marble, each step echoing louder than it should. When he stopped, his gaze fell on the girl first, then shifted to the owner. A faint smirk curved at his lips. "I see you've found her," he said casually, as if he had been waiting for this exact moment. The owner's expression hardened, his jaw tightening. The girl's heart raced, her thoughts spinning. Who was this man and how did he know her? She had never seen him before in her life, yet the way he spoke made it sound as if her presence here wasn't random at all. The tension doubled instantly, as if an invisible thread had been pulled tighter around everyone in the room. The waitress, desperate to protect herself from whatever storm was brewing, blurted out, "Sir, I didn't know she was connected to anyone. I was only doing my job." Her words hung awkwardly in the air, sounding like an attempt to excuse herself before anything else came to light. But the new man didn't even glance at her. His eyes stayed locked on the owner. The staff began whispering among themselves, speculating in hushed tones. "What does he mean by found her?" one asked nervously. Another replied, "Maybe she's not just some girl looking for work. Maybe there's more to her story than she's letting on." The uncertainty only fueled the mystery, making the girl's quiet figure feel even more significant. The owner finally spoke, his voice firm but colder now. "This isn't your place," he said to the man. But the man only chuckled softly, shaking his head. "On the contrary," he replied smoothly. "This is exactly where I need to be. And she," his eyes flicked back to the girl, "is exactly who I've been looking for." The girl's pulse hammered in her ears. Her mind searched desperately for answers. Why was this stranger claiming to know her? What did he mean by looking for her? She had lived her life quietly, struggling just to make ends meet, and yet here she was, standing in the middle of a storm she didn't understand. The owner's silence spoke volumes. His eyes narrowed, his fists clenched at his sides, as if there was a history between him and this man that no one else in the room knew about. The girl sensed it too, that this was bigger than her job applications or her brother's photograph. She was standing in the middle of something much larger, something that could change her life in ways she wasn't ready for. The guests who had been ushered out earlier now lingered just beyond the glass doors, peering in curiously. Their silhouettes loomed, whispering to one another, straining to catch glimpses of the unfolding drama. And inside, the lobby felt like a stage with only 3 main players left: the owner, the mysterious man, and the girl who had walked in with nothing but hope. The man's smirk deepened as he leaned slightly forward. "Tell her the truth," he said to the owner, his voice dripping with challenge. "Or shall I?" The girl froze, her breath catching in her throat. Truth? What truth? She turned toward the owner, whose stern expression faltered for just a second, enough to reveal that there was indeed something he had been holding back. The room pulsed with suspense, every person waiting for the words that could shatter everything. The stakes had shifted, and the girl's journey was no longer just about finding work or proving herself. It was about uncovering secrets buried deep within the very walls of this hotel, secrets tied to her life in ways she had never imagined. And as the owner finally opened his mouth to respond, the tension rose to its breaking point, teetering on the edge of a revelation that no one was prepared for. The lobby had fallen so silent that even the faint hum of the chandelier lights could be heard. The girl's wide eyes moved between the 2 men, her chest tightening as if the truth they were about to reveal would change everything she thought she knew. The owner's face was tense, carved with lines of a past he rarely allowed anyone to glimpse. The stranger stood tall, confident, with that same unsettling smirk as though he already knew how this story would end. Finally the owner spoke, his voice low but steady. "You don't understand," he said to the girl, though his eyes never left the man in the dark suit. "You weren't turned away tonight because you didn't belong. You were turned away because someone has been trying to keep you out. Someone who knows exactly who you are." Her heart pounded faster. "Who I am," she whispered, her voice breaking. She had always believed she was just another girl fighting to survive, just another face overlooked by the world. Now, those words made her feel like her entire life had been built on something she hadn't yet discovered. The man in the suit stepped forward, his voice sharp. "Enough games. Tell her before she hears it from me." The owner drew in a deep breath, his shoulders stiffening. Then he turned to the girl, his expression softening for the first time that night. "You're not here by accident. Years ago, before I built this hotel, before any of this, your mother worked for me. She wasn't just an employee. She was family." The girl's knees weakened, her breath catching. "Your mother," she whispered, disbelief flashing in her eyes. The stranger's smirk widened. "And you think that makes her safe?" he said coldly. "You've kept your secret long enough. She deserves to know the whole truth. The hotel isn't just tied to her mother. It's tied to her future." The girl's head spun. Secrets about her mother, about her connection to this place she had walked into hoping only for work. Suddenly it all seemed too much to carry. She thought of the photo of her brother, of all the nights her mother whispered promises that things would one day be better. Was this what she had meant? The owner's voice grew firmer, his authority returning. "Your mother helped me build everything here. And when she left, it was because she wanted to protect you and your brother from being pulled into this world of power, money, and conflict." He glanced sharply at the man in the suit. "And from men like him." Gasps filled the lobby as the weight of his words sank in. The girl was not just a stranger looking for work. She was tied to the very foundation of the hotel itself. The waitress, standing frozen by the desk, realized how badly she had misjudged everything. Shame flushed her face as she lowered her eyes, unable to meet the girl's gaze. But before relief could settle, the twist came. The man in the suit stepped closer, his voice calm yet laced with menace. "You left out the most important part," he said. He pulled something from his jacket, an old envelope, worn and yellowed. "Her mother didn't just work for you. She left this behind for her. And it tells a very different story about who really owns this hotel." The envelope landed on the counter with a sharp snap, and the girl stared at it, her world spinning again. The truth she thought she had just uncovered was not the end, but only another beginning. The owner's face darkened. His eyes filled with something between anger and fear. The girl reached out with trembling hands toward the envelope, knowing that whatever was inside would not only resolve the conflict before her, but change her destiny forever. And as her fingers brushed the paper, the entire room seemed to hold its breath, waiting for the final secret that would turn everything upside down once again. The girl's hands shook as she opened the worn envelope, the paper inside fragile from age. She unfolded it slowly, every rustle echoing in the silent lobby. Her eyes scanned the faded ink, and tears welled as the words became clear. It was a handwritten letter, signed by her mother. The letter explained how years ago, when the hotel was still just a dream, her mother had been more than an employee. She had been a partner. She had invested her savings, supported the owner through his struggles, and made sacrifices so the foundation of the hotel could be built. But when she realized the business world was turning ruthless, she walked away to protect her children, fearing they would be pulled into battles over power and wealth. The girl pressed the letter to her chest, her heart heavy with the truth but also filled with a strange sense of pride. For the first time, she understood that her family's story was tied to something far greater than she ever imagined. She wasn't just another girl searching for work. She was part of the hotel's history, a living link to the sacrifices her mother had made. The owner stepped forward, his expression a mix of guilt and gratitude. "Your mother saved me," he admitted quietly. "Without her, none of this would exist. I've carried that truth for years, but I never knew when or how to share it with you. I thought keeping you away was protecting you. But tonight I see I was wrong." His words carried the weight of regret, but also the sincerity of a man finally facing the past. The man in the suit, who had come with confidence and menace, realized his grip on the moment was slipping. The letter spoke louder than any accusation he could make. His smirk faded as he stepped back, his power over the situation dissolving. "So it's true then," he muttered, more to himself than anyone else. He gave one last sharp glance at the owner before turning toward the door. His presence, once unsettling, now felt hollow as he left the lobby behind. The waitress, who had started the night by dismissing the girl so harshly, now stood red-faced with shame. She finally whispered, "I was wrong. I judged you without knowing who you were, without even giving you a chance." Her voice cracked, the weight of her mistake pressing down heavily. The girl, still holding her mother's letter, simply nodded. "You didn't have to know who I was," she said softly. "You only had to see me as a person." Her words struck deeper than any reprimand, leaving the waitress with a lesson she would never forget. The staff, who had watched the drama unfold with wide eyes, now stood taller, as though they too had learned something about what respect and dignity truly meant. And the guests who peeked from behind the doors whispered the story that would soon spread far beyond the walls of the hotel, a story not of wealth or luxury, but of truth, respect, and the unthinkable courage of a girl who refused to disappear. The owner placed a hand gently on the girl's shoulder. "This place will always have a place for you," he said, his voice steady now. "Not because of your past, but because of who you are and what you stand for." The girl smiled faintly, the first true smile she had managed that night. She thought of her brother waiting at home, and how proud her mother would be if she could see this moment. As she walked out of the lobby with the letter in her hands and her head held high, the story had already become more than hers alone. It was a reminder to everyone watching that respect should never depend on status, and that behind every face is a history worth listening to. In the end, the hotel was not just a place of wealth and grandeur. It had become a place where truth was spoken, where dignity was restored, and where one young girl proved that even the smallest voice could change everything.